The Galactic Military Academy had trained over 2,000 warrior species, yet none of them prepared its instructors for a single human reaction time. What happened next wasn't luck, it was biology, physics, and training colliding in 1 second. Commander Vex Therion had seen approximately 2,417 species pass through the combat halls of the Galactic Military Academy in his 30-year tenure. He'd trained Krithari berserkers who could punch through starship hulls, silicoid warriors whose crystalline bodies could withstand plasma fire, and even those insufferable Quentari monks, who move like liquid smoke. So when the Academy brass informed him that Earth, that backwater mudball in the unfashionable arm of the galaxy, was sending a cadet, well, let's just say his enthusiasm registered somewhere between mildly annoyed and actively hostile. Humans. Fragile, squishy, short-lived creatures who'd barely discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago. They had no natural armor, no venom sacs, no telepathic abilities, nothing that made them remotely qualified for military service alongside actual warrior species. The fact that the Galactic Council had approved their application was, in Vex's professional opinion, either a cosmic joke or proof that bureaucrats had finally achieved weaponized stupidity. The training facility hummed with the usual pre-assessment chaos. Holographic targets flickered into existence along the walls, gravity plates cycled through their calibration sequences, and the assembled cadets, all 47 of them, stood in neat formation. Well, mostly neat. The Thragian in the back row kept shifting his weight because standing still for more than 30 seconds apparently violated some cultural norm about appearing too rigid, or whatever nonsense his species believed. Vex's triple-jointed fingers drummed against his datapad. Combat assessment day. His favorite. Nothing quite like watching fresh recruits realize that their planetary combat training meant absolutely nothing when faced with galactic standard warfare. He'd already mentally prepared his usual speech. The one about how your species' reputation ends at your atmosphere, and how mediocrity dies in the stars. Today was going to be delightful, especially with that human watching. She stood at the end of the formation, exactly regulation height for her species, which meant she barely reached Vex's chest plate. Cadet Riley Chen, according to the file that had ruined his morning coffee, 23 Earth years old, which translated to roughly, well, practically a hatchling by any civilized species standards. Her uniform was crisp, her posture textbook perfect, and her expression utterly maddeningly neutral. Vex approached slowly, letting his boots echo across the training floor. 8 feet of scaled muscle, decorated with the combat ribbons of 14 campaigns bearing down on one very small human. The other cadets shifted nervously. Good. Fear was educational. Well, Vex said, his voice carrying that special tone he reserved for beings he considered beneath his notice. The Terran delegation has arrived. Tell me, Cadet Chen, did your transport have trouble finding the Academy, or did you stop to classify some rocks along the way? I hear humans enjoy such thrilling activities. A few snickers rippled through the formation. The Thragian trainee actually slapped his knee equivalent, which was both anatomically disturbing and socially inappropriate. Riley's face remained blank, those dark eyes too small by any reasonable standard fixed on a point somewhere past Vex's left shoulder. Parade rest position, perfectly maintained. Sir, no sir, she replied, her voice clear and unbothered. Oh, she was going to be fun to break. Vex circled her like a Kirvathi shark examining wounded prey. She was built lean, compact, none of the impressive bulk that marked proper warriors. Her skin was this bizarre pinkish tan color that looked like it would tear if you sneezed on it too hard. No claws, no fangs, no protective plating. Just soft flesh wrapped around a calcium-based skeleton that probably fractured if someone looked at it wrong. Her hair, dark and pulled back in what humans called a bun, seemed to serve no defensive or sensory purpose whatsoever. I've read your file, Vex continued, stopping directly in front of her. Impressive by Earth standards, I'm sure. Top of your class at some, what did you call it, military academy? He practically choked on the words. How quaint. How utterly adorably quaint. The silicoid cadet behind Riley made a sound like grinding gravel. Laughter, probably. Riley's jaw tightened, just slightly. Just enough. Perfect. Vex had originally planned to let Chen embarrass herself during the standard assessment drills, watch her fail the strength tests, fumble through the weapons qualification, maybe cry a little when the gravity settings increased beyond Earth normal. Standard first-day humiliation. Nothing personal, but that tiny jaw clench, that microscopic display of defiance, that changed thing. You know what? Vex announced, turning to address the entire formation. I think we should begin today with a practical demonstration. Nothing teaches quite like hands-on experience. He smiled, which on a Vraxian involved way too many teeth for human comfort. Cadet Chen, front and center, Riley stepped forward without hesitation. Either brave or stupid. Vex's money was on stupid. Combat assessment protocols normally involve simulation arrays and haptic feedback suits, Vex explained, pacing around the training circle that had materialized in the floor's center. However, I believe our newest recruit deserves special attention. After all, we wouldn't want the fragile Terran to get confused by advanced technology on her very first day. More laughter from the formation. The Quintari cadet, Silvex, looked uncomfortable. Good. Someone should be. Vex's internal monologue was already writing the after-action report. One quick demonstration of superior speed and strength pinned the human in approximately 4 seconds. Maybe 5 if he wanted to drag it out for educational purposes. She'd tap out, he'd help her up with exaggerated gentleness, and everyone would learn a valuable lesson about the hierarchy of galactic military power. Textbook. Simple. Utterly without risk. He'd done this exact routine with 362 cadets over the years. Granted, none of them had been human, but how different could it really be? Standard combat rules apply, Vex said, rolling his shoulders in a way that made his scales ripple impressively. First to submit or first to unconsciousness. Don't worry, cadet. I'll be gentle. We can't have Earth's first representative going home in a medical pod on day 1, bad for interspecies relations. Riley said nothing. She simply moved to the opposite side of the circle, her boots making soft sounds against the training mat. Her hands hung loose at her sides, not even raised in a defensive position. She looked so completely, almost insultingly relaxed, that Vex felt a flicker of genuine irritation. The other cadets formed a ring around them. Vex could feel their anticipation, their eagerness to see the new species put in its place. The training facility's sensors activated, recording everything for the inevitable review, and knowing the Academy's rumor mill for entertainment purposes across 6 dormitories by dinner time, Vex cracked his neck. Left, then right. The sound echoed nicely. Whenever you're ready, cadet, he said, settling into a combat stance that had won him the Academy's close quarters championship 4 years running. Riley Chen simply nodded once, and that's when Vex made his first, last and only mistake. Vex decided to open with a classic intimidation move. Nothing lethal, just a lightning-fast strike toward her shoulder that would spin her around and put her off balance. He'd done it 1,000 times. Quick, efficient. Embarrassing for the opponent. He launched forward, his superior reach and speed making the outcome feel inevitable. Riley sidestepped. Barely. Just enough. Vex's strike whistled past her shoulder by maybe 2 inches. He compensated immediately, professional instincts kicking in. And that's when his ego made an executive decision his brain would later deeply regret. Instead of resetting his stance, instead of acknowledging that maybe possibly this required actual attention, he committed to the bit. He swung his other hand around in a wide open palm slap, aimed at her face. Not a punch. Oh no, a slap. The kind of dismissive, contemptuous strike you'd use on someone you didn't even consider worthy of a closed fist. Maximum humiliation, minimum effort. His palm connected with her cheek with a crack that echoed through the training facility like a gunshot. For exactly half a second, Vex felt triumphant. There. Lesson delivered. The human's head snapped to the side from the impact, and he was already preparing his condescending speech about learning one's place, when something inside Riley Chen's body apparently decided that acceptable tolerances had been exceeded. What happened next occurred in less time than it takes to blink, but the Academy's high-speed sensors caught every single frame, and those frames would be analyzed, studied, and shown in tactical courses for the next 2 decades. Riley's head came back around, not slowly, not dazed. Her eyes locked onto Vex with a clarity that suddenly made him very aware that human eyes had something his species' eyes didn't: binocular predator vision. And those eyes were now tracking him with the kind of focus usually reserved for prey animals in their final moments. Her right foot shifted just slightly, her weight redistributed in a way that Vex's combat-trained brain recognized 1 microsecond too late as a loading mechanism. Then she moved. Her right hand came up in a blur, fingers rigid, and struck directly into Vex's throat with surgical precision. Not his armored chest, not his reinforced skull, his throat, where even Vraxian biology kept the squishy, vulnerable bits, because evolution hadn't figured out how to armor everything without making breathing impossible. Vex's air supply immediately filed a complaint and went on strike, but Riley wasn't done. Oh no. In the same fluid motion, while Vex's hands instinctively went to his throat. She grabbed his right arm, the one that had slapped her, stepped inside his stance, and executed a throw that would have made physics professors weep with joy at its efficient application of leverage, momentum, and gravity. Vex's world rotated 90 degrees, then 180. Then he made extremely close and personal contact with the training mat, all 8 feet and 400 pounds of him, with enough force that the impact sensors registered it as a potential equipment malfunction. The air left his lungs. The dignity left his body. And somewhere in the formation someone made a sound that might have been a gasp or might have been a suppressed laugh. Vex couldn't tell because his ears were ringing and his entire spine was filing formal complaints with his central nervous system. Riley stepped back, returned to parade rest, and waited. The entire sequence from slap to mat had taken 1.3 seconds. Commander Vex Therion, decorated veteran of 14 campaigns, lay on his back staring at the ceiling and contemplated his life choices. Vex's first coherent thought, once his brain rebooted from its unexpected system crash, was that the ceiling panels really needed cleaning. His second thought was that breathing shouldn't require this much conscious effort. His third thought was drowned out by the absolutely searing pain radiating from approximately 12 different parts of his body that had up until 90 seconds ago been working just fine. He tried to sit up. His body vetoed that decision immediately and with extreme prejudice. "Medical," someone shouted. Silvex, the Quinteri cadet, whose voice had gone up about 3 octaves. "Medical team to Training Bay 7 now." The formation had broken. Cadets were crowding around the circle's edge, some with their communication devices out, definitely recording, definitely about to make Vex's humiliation go viral across the entire Academy network before lunch. The Thrudgeon was making that wheezing sound his species produced when experiencing extreme second-hand embarrassment. 2 of the Krothari cadets had their mandibles hanging open in what could only be described as shock, and Riley Chen, the human, Earth's tiny squishy representative, stood exactly where she'd stepped back to, hands behind her back, expression neutral, like she hadn't just converted a decorated combat instructor into a floor decoration. "Cadet Chen," wheezed Vex, finally managing to get some air past his traumatized throat. "What? How?" "Sir, you initiated combat contact, sir," Riley replied, her tone perfectly professional, perfectly calm, perfectly infuriating. "Standard response protocols applied, sir." "Standard response protocols." She'd just folded him like a cheap suit and called it standard. The medical team burst through the bay doors, 3 Medicae officers with their emergency kits, moving with practiced efficiency. The lead medic, a 6-armed hexapod named Druva, took one look at Vex on the floor and made a clicking sound that definitely meant she was judging him. "Commander Therion," Druva said, running a scanner over his prone form. "Elevated stress indicators, minor tracheal inflammation, significant bruising to the dorsal region, and," she paused, her scanner beeping insistently, "is that your pride I'm detecting at critically low levels?" "Just fix me," Vex growled, which came out more like a croak. "Oh, I'll fix you," Druva replied, injecting something into his neck that made the pain dial down from screaming agony to merely excruciating discomfort. "But I'm also filing this under preventable injuries caused by instructor arrogance. That's 3 this month, Commander. You're trending." The bay doors opened again. This time the energy in the room shifted from shocked amusement to genuine concern. Academy Director Krell entered, all 9 feet of crystalline authority, his faceted surface reflecting the overhead lights in ways that made everyone instinctively straighten their posture. Behind him came Security Chief Orath and, oh wonderful, Vice Director Then, who handled interspecies relations and probably had several migraine medications in her pocket already. "Someone," Krell's voice resonated through the bay like a gong, "want to explain why my combat instructor is receiving medical attention on the first day of the new training cycle?" 47 cadets suddenly found the floor fascinating. "Sir," Riley stepped forward, because apparently the human had a death wish to go with her terrifying combat skills. "Training exercise, sir." Commander Therion was demonstrating combat techniques. "Is that so?" Krell's faceted eyes turned toward Vex, who was being helped into a sitting position by 2 medics who were absolutely not being as gentle as they could be. "Commander?" Vex's throat felt like he'd swallowed broken glass, his back was screaming, and his ego was somewhere in the corner, rocking back and forth and muttering about retirement plans. But he was still an officer of the Galactic Military Academy, and he still had some shreds of dignity to salvage. "Yes, sir," he managed. "Demonstration. I see," Krell said, in a tone that made it very clear he saw everything, understood everything, and was finding all of it tremendously annoying. And how did this demonstration conclude? Silence. Painful, awkward. The whole galaxy is watching and recording silence. Finally, the Trojan cadet, bless his catastrophically poor timing, supplied helpfully. The human one, sir. The medical bay smelled like antiseptic and Vex's shattered dignity. Dhruva had finished her examination and was now reading off his injuries with the enthusiasm of someone ordering lunch. Moderate tracheal bruising, strain to the cervical vertebrae, deep tissue trauma across the dorsal plate region, and a partially displaced shoulder joint. Nothing permanent, but you'll be on light duty for 6 days minimum. 6 days, Vex repeated flatly. 6 days, Dhruva confirmed, applying a regenerative patch to his neck. Maybe use them to contemplate your tactical decisions. Through the medical bay's window, Vex could see Director Krell and the command staff reviewing the security footage in the adjacent office. They'd been at it for 20 minutes. 20 minutes of watching him get absolutely demolished in high definition from 6 different angles. Wonderful, fantastic. Exactly how he'd envisioned his career progressing. Vice Director then entered the medical bay, her datapad clutched in 3 of her 4 hands. She was a Velusian, a species known for diplomatic tact, which meant when she looked disappointed, you knew you'd really stepped in it. Commander Therian, she said, settling into a chair that adjusted for her physiology. We've completed our review of the incident. It wasn't an incident, Vex muttered. It was a training exercise. It was, then agreed, a training exercise that ended with you on the floor and our first human cadet demonstrating capabilities that quite frankly you should have researched before engaging in unsanctioned combat. She tapped her datapad and a holographic display materialized between them. Security footage, slowed down to 1/10 speed. Vex watched himself throw that contemptuous slap, watched it connect, watched Riley's head snap to the side. Then came her counterattack, broken down frame by frame, according to our combat analysts, then continued. Cadet Chen's strike to your throat used approximately 30% of her potential force. The throw that followed utilized your own momentum and body weight against you, which means she expended minimal energy. In essence, Commander, she went easy on you. Vex's scales itched. That usually happened when he was extremely irritated and couldn't do anything about it. Easy, very easy. Then zoomed in on Riley's face during the counterstrike. Her expression showed calculation, control, precision. Not rage, not panic. Our analysts estimate that if she'd used full force on that throat strike, you'd be breathing through a mechanical assist right now. And the throat, she controlled your descent. You hit hard, yes, but she could have spiked you into the mat with enough force to crack your vertebrae. The itching intensified, then pulled up another file. Let me share what we learned about Cadet Chen after this incident prompted us to actually read her complete background file. The one that went beyond basic statistics. She highlighted several sections. 5th-generation military family on Earth. Grandmother was a hand-to-hand combat instructor for their Marine Corps. Father competed in multiple martial arts disciplines internationally. Riley herself holds black belts in 3 separate fighting systems: Judo, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and Krav Maga. She's been training since she was 6 years old. The file I received said nothing about combat training, Vex protested. The file you received, then corrected, said she had extensive physical conditioning and martial training. You apparently interpreted that as their equivalent of basic fitness. Ouch. That one hit harder than the throw. Furthermore, then wasn't done twisting the knife. Her academy entrance scores in close quarters combat placed her in the 97th percentile across all applicants this cycle. All species. She outscored the Krethari berserker in technical proficiency. Vex said nothing. What was there to say? He'd assumed, he'd mocked, and he'd paid the price. It gets better, then said, though her tone suggested it absolutely did not get better. The footage has already circulated through the Cadet network. Current status, 43,000 views, climbing rapidly. Someone set it to music. Another edited in commentary. There's a betting pool on how long until it reaches the outer colonies. Through the window, Vex could see cadets passing by in the corridor. Every single one glanced toward the medical bay, saw him, and either quickly looked away or failed to suppress a grin. The Trojan actually gave him a sympathetic wave. The human, Vex said slowly, has made me a laughingstock. No, Commander. Then stood, collecting her datapad. You made yourself a laughingstock. Cadet Chen simply defended herself when you struck her in the face during what you've classified as a training exercise. Now Director Krell wants to see you in his office once you're cleared. I'd prepare a very good explanation. She paused at the door. Oh, and Commander, welcome to the new galactic reality. Humans are here. They're capable, and underestimating them is a mistake you only get to make once. The door closed behind her. Vex stared at the ceiling and groaned. Director Krell's office occupied the highest point of the Academy's central tower, with windows offering a 360-degree view of the training grounds below. Vex had been in this office exactly 4 times in his career. 3 times to receive commendations, once to receive a formal reprimand for excessive force during training. He had a sinking feeling this visit would be adding to the latter category. Krell sat behind his desk, a massive slab of polished obsidian that somehow looked small compared to his crystalline frame. Vice Director Than occupied one of the side chairs. Security Chief Orath stood by the window, arms crossed, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else, and sitting in the remaining chair, posture perfect, expression neutral, was Cadet Riley Chen. Commander Therion. Krell began, gesturing to the empty chair. Sit. Vex sat. His back protested. He ignored it. We're here to conduct a formal review of yesterday's training incident. Krell continued. This is not a trial. This is an inquiry to determine what protocols, if any, were violated, and what actions need to be taken to prevent similar incidents. Commander, your statement. Vex had rehearsed this. He'd spent all night crafting an explanation that was technically accurate while being maximally face-saving. Sir, I engaged Cadet Chen in a practical combat demonstration to assess her readiness for Academy-level training, standard procedure for evaluating new cadets from unknown combat backgrounds. During the exercise, I utilized an open hand strike to test her defensive reflexes. She responded with appropriate, if unexpectedly effective, countermeasures. You slapped her, Orath said from the window, his tone suggesting he had absolutely no patience for bureaucratic word salad. I executed a controlled strike, Vex corrected. You slapped her in the face in front of 47 witnesses, Orath repeated, turning from the window. Let's use accurate language, Commander. Krell held up one crystalline hand. Cadet Chen, your statement. Riley stood, came to attention, and spoke with the kind of clarity that suggested she'd given testimony before. Sir, Commander Therion announced a combat demonstration and designated me as his partner. He initiated contact with multiple strikes. When his open hand strike connected with my face, I interpreted this as authorization to engage with full defensive protocols. I neutralized the threat using minimal necessary force and immediately disengaged upon achieving control of the situation. Sir, minimal necessary force. Vex couldn't help himself. You put me in medical for 6 days. Yes, sir, Riley replied, turning slightly to address him directly. If I had used maximum force, you'd be in medical for 6 months. Sir. The room went quiet. Even Krell seemed momentarily at a loss for words, then broke the silence. The security footage supports Cadet Chen's statement. Analysis confirms she controlled her strikes and the subsequent throw. Commander Therion, your own after-action reports from previous training sessions show a pattern of using physical intimidation with new cadets. This is the first time one has successfully countered it. Vex felt his career prospects draining away like water through a sieve. Krell leaned forward, his faceted surface catching the light in a way that made him look even more imposing. Commander Therion, you are a decorated officer with an exemplary service record. However, your conduct yesterday demonstrated poor judgment, inadequate preparation, and a concerning lack of respect for a cadet under your instruction. Striking a trainee in the face, regardless of your intent, crosses a line. He paused, letting that sink in. Effective immediately, you are removed from primary instruction duties for the remainder of this cycle. You will serve as assistant instructor under Commander Yalith's supervision. Additionally, you will issue a formal apology to Cadet Chen and complete a recertification course on appropriate training methodologies. Sir, Vex began, but Krell's expression stopped him cold. Dismissed, Commander. Vex stood, his back screaming, his pride in tatters. Riley remained seated, still at attention, still utterly composed. Vex left the office knowing that he'd just learned the most expensive lesson of his career. Assistant instructor. Vex rolled the title around in his mind like a bitter pill he couldn't quite swallow. 30 years of service, 14 campaigns, 4 championship titles, and now he was taking orders from Yalith, a Mandorian who'd graduated from the academy 15 years after Vex had started teaching here. The first day of his reassignment, Vex reported to Training Bay 12, where Yalith was running advanced combat drills. The Mandorian took one look at him, mandibles clicking in what might have been sympathy or amusement, hard to tell with their species, and said, "Try not to get knocked out by any more humans, yeah." So much for professional courtesy. Meanwhile, Riley Chen had become something of a cultural phenomenon. Vex watched from the sidelines as cadets who'd previously ignored her now gave her a respectful wide berth in the corridors. The Krothari berserker, a 7-foot mountain of muscle named Kragoth, had apparently asked her to demonstrate the throw she'd used. She'd obliged, putting him on the mat 3 times before he'd figured out the counter. He'd laughed each time, that booming Krothari laugh that sounded like rocks in a grinder, and declared her honorable in combat. The Thragian started a fan club, an actual organized fan club, with membership credentials and everything. Vex wanted to be annoyed about it, but honestly couldn't muster the energy. What really stung was watching the other instructors. Commander Yalith had added human combat footage to the curriculum. Actual Earth military training videos showing their various fighting systems. Master Instructor Keth, who taught advanced tactics, invited Riley to guest demonstrate techniques during his senior seminar. She'd shown a room full of 4th-year cadets how human leverage-based combat could neutralize size and strength advantages. Vex had attended that seminar for research purposes. Definitely not because he was trying to figure out where he'd gone wrong. The Academy's combat database had been updated too. New entries for Judo, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Krav Maga, Muay Thai, boxing, wrestling, and about 40 other human martial disciplines. Turned out Earth, with its single species and lack of natural weapons, had spent thousands of years developing elaborate ways for humans to hurt other humans efficiently. They'd turned it into art, sport, philosophy, and science. Terrifying. Absolutely terrifying when you thought about it. The galactic military forums had exploded with debate. Half the posts were skeptical, claiming the footage had been edited or that Vex had taken a dive for propaganda purposes. The other half were from instructors at other academies reporting similar experiences with their human cadets. Apparently Riley wasn't an outlier. She was standard. One post from a Vraxian officer on the Korath station stuck with Vex. "We've been measuring warrior capability by natural weapons and physical advantages for millennia. Humans don't have those, so they built skill instead. We're comparing biology to technique. It's not a fair comparison, and we're the ones coming up short." Vex saved that post. Read it occasionally when his back hurt and his pride stung. The galaxy was learning a lesson he'd learned the hard way. Humanity had arrived, and they'd arrived ready to fight. Whether the rest of the galaxy was ready for them, well, that was a different question entirely. 3 months later, Vex stood in the observation deck overlooking Training Bay 7, the same bay where his dignity had gone to die. Commander Yalith had finally cleared him to return to primary instruction duties next cycle, pending successful completion of his recertification course. The irony wasn't lost on him that his final exam involved demonstrating proper respect and assessment protocols with training partners. His test partner had been Riley Chen. She'd gone easy on him. Again, below the current training cycle was running combat assessments. Riley moved through her opponent, a silicoid twice her size, with the kind of efficiency that Vex had come to recognize as her signature style. No wasted movement, no showboating, just pure technical precision. The silicoid tapped out within 40 seconds. "She's something else, isn't she?" Druva had appeared beside him, her 6 arms carrying various medical supplies. Apparently she had a permanent station here now. Ever since the human arrived, and injury rates had mysteriously increased. "She's competent," Vex admitted, which was perhaps the most generous assessment he'd given any cadet in 5 years. "You mean she's exceptional, and you're too stubborn to say it out loud," Druva corrected, checking her datapad. "Top marks in combat theory, tactics, leadership exercises, and she just scored highest in the class on the zero-gravity warfare simulation. The Quintari meditation instructor says she's the most focused student he's had in a decade." Vex said nothing, watching Riley help her opponent up, showing him the leverage point she'd exploited. "You know what the funny thing is?" Druva continued, because apparently she'd decided Vex needed a running commentary on his humiliation. "She's not even the scary one." "What?" "Earth sent 3 cadets this cycle," Druva explained. "Riley's the diplomat. The other 2 are in the advanced weapons track in the Starship Operations program. Word is they're sending 30 next year. Command wants them integrated across all branches. 30 more humans with their leverage-based combat systems and their predator focus and their complete disregard for the natural order of bigger equals stronger. The galaxy's going to be very different in a few years," Vex muttered. "It already is," Druva said, heading toward the exit. "You just got the preview." Down in the training bay, Riley had finished her assessments and was heading out. She passed directly below the observation deck and, either through incredible spatial awareness or just cosmic timing, glanced up. Her eyes met Vex's through the reinforced glass. She nodded. Once. Respectful. Professional. Vex, after a moment's hesitation, nodded back. As she left the bay, Vex heard the Thragian cadet call out, "Hey Riley, training bay assignments are posted. Guess who's teaching our advanced combat course next cycle?" Riley's response echoed back. "Commander Therion, yup, should be interesting." Through the glass, Vex could have sworn he saw her smile. His back twinged, a phantom pain that had nothing to do with physical injury and everything to do with the memory of hitting that mat. Yeah, he thought, interesting was one word for it. Terrifying was probably